Dive deep into the heart of South Korea's most pressing stories with the weekly Korea Pro podcast. Hosted by Jongmin Kim and John Lee, this weekly 15-minute podcast is your source for thorough analysis on all things ROK. From intricate politics to dynamic cultural shifts, we cover it all. Tune in every Friday on koreapro.org, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Korea Pro Podcast, insight, not just information. Hello listeners and welcome to the NK News Podcast. I'm your host, Jacko Zwetsloot, and I'm recording this short pre-interview on Tuesday the 23rd of January, and I'm in the studio with Colin Zwirko. Colin, welcome back on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jacko.
So, you've chosen a couple of stories that have been big for you this week. What would you like to start with?
Let's start with the big topic of Russia and North Korean cooperation.
That's an ongoing story, yep. What are the new developments?
So last week, the North Korean Foreign Minister Choe Son Hui went to Moscow to have a series of meetings with the president, Vladimir Putin, and also with her counterpart, Lavrov. So what I thought was pretty interesting about this was, obviously, we didn't really expect much explicit to come out of these government statements, readouts.
Right, because previous meetings, even when Lavrov went to Pyongyang, we didn't really get a very long statement. It was general platitudes and niceness and we'll work together, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, but they're really not hiding anything when it comes to the optics. I mean, North Korean state media didn't really post that many photos of the event, but obviously Russian media, they had pool reporters. These people aren't, under the thumb. They're able to kind of report as much as they, I don't know. Anyway, but so there were photos of these meetings, and in the meeting with Choe, the DPRK foreign minister, and Putin, there was a small table, and at the table was just the ambassador, the North Korean ambassador, the translator, interpreter, and then the top weapons official in all of North Korea. So this was who's at the table with Choe, and it screams that one of the top topics of the day with Putin was weapons cooperation, weapons trade, and I think this is quite interesting, the fact that, they're not hiding this.
Although at the same time, consistently for several months, both countries have denied any export, sales, gifts, donations of weapons one way or the other, right?
Yeah, I think they're just playing the card of just political straight denial while not really trying that hard to do. I mean, they're trying to obfuscate the trade in some ways, but
these denials become less plausible once you have the top weapons person sitting at the table at a meeting with Putin, right?
Yeah, this was Jo Chun-yong, the munitions industry director for the party. Wow. And then another thing that was really interesting, and I apologize, I don't know who was first to discover this, but an RIA pool reporter, photographer, took a photo of a piece of paper that the interpreter for Choe was holding. And on this piece of paper, in the high-res version, I saw this on Yonhap and RFA, you zoom in on the piece of paper, and it has a list of Russian space-related places for visits, quote-unquote, I guess for a future North Korean delegation.
Wow.
So this is like a machine factory that produces rocket machinery, rocket equipment, rocket parts, and a space research center, stuff like this. So space cooperation is also on high. And obviously that's where Putin met Kim at a space launch center.
Yeah.
So they're barely trying to hide that part, that they're cooperating on space, on aerospace technology.
Okay. Do you know if any Russian journalists that were there, were they able to give questions to Madame Choe?
That I'm not sure of. I didn't see reports like that, but it's possible. She's well versed in the international sphere, so I don't think she would be fazed by a question.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a development, but we don't know any specifics yet as to what came out of that. Right? Has either country released a statement?
Yeah, they've talked about the meetings, but also just platitudes. And the Kremlin spokesperson Peskov said something like, "We will be working in quote unquote sensitive areas." So they're once again just barely trying to hide
Yeah.
the sanctions busting activities, and also talking about Putin's visit to Pyongyang, which we expect to happen, sometime this year, but date is not set, but that will likely happen. And they're obviously still talking about a lot of very sensitive issues, so that will require another meeting if they want to kind of go to the next step or move beyond what they agreed to last year.
So if we go back contextually to last September, when it was Lavrov, wasn't it, who went to the parade in Pyongyang? No, sorry, beg your pardon. It was Shoigu, the head of the
defense minister.
The defense minister Shoigu, who went there, and then Lavrov went later. So there've been now, I guess, half a dozen high-level meetings between North Korean leadership and Russian leadership over the last 6 months.
Yeah, and a lot of secret flights of Russian military flights going into Pyongyang.
Right.
We've reported on a few of them, and a few of them have just happened that weren't caught in real time. So these types of delegations, this military talks at maybe a mid-level, they're still ongoing all the time.
And I just keep wondering, how it is that we haven't seen any high-level meetings between Chinese and North Korean leadership in all this time. It just seems to be Russia and North Korea, Russia and North Korea. And we know that Xi Jinping doesn't like to be upstaged, and China doesn't like to play second fiddle to anybody. I wonder when...
I don't know about that. I mean, it's tough. I don't know if the kind of line that, Putin doesn't, or that Xi doesn't want to look like the second in line in importance to Kim Jong Un. I don't know if that really matters that much, especially because Xi has a lot more to play on the on the international stage in terms of reputation than Putin does. But I think they will meet sometime this year. It's not...
When you say they, you mean Xi and Kim?
Yeah. That's just because trade is growing between the two countries after the post-COVID situation, like rebounding. There are delegations going all the time between the two countries in the last couple of months. So I think that it just depends. I don't know if that means the leaders have to meet or not, but definitely there's no kind of issues between the two countries just because of what they're doing with Putin.
Right. No, that's true. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. Thank you. Keep an eye on that and keep us updated. What's another story you'd like to talk about this week?
I mean, we could talk a little bit about maybe the fallout from this unification, this decision by Kim Jong Un to abandon the idea of peaceful unification with South Korea.
Right. That's certainly a big topic since the speech on the 31st of December by Kim Jong Un.
Yeah, and then he talked about it at an Supreme People's Assembly session maybe a little over a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so just in the last week, we're kind of just seeing how this has moved into action. So in North Korean TV, quickly after he said in a speech at the Supreme People's Assembly that we need to get rid of references to unification in our propaganda. We need to redefine our borders in the Constitution, stuff like this. So then immediately after that, in the next couple of days, you see state TV starting to they used to always color in the whole Korean peninsula as that's our country.
Right.
And then quickly starting to draw the line at the real border of the country where South Korea begins. And now it's only the North, the actual, as we know it, the North Korean territory is the only thing being colored in now. So that's just a little thing where you can just see them putting it into action. And they also declared they would knock down the unification monument.
They did, which is on the way from Pyongyang to Panmunjom on the big highway.
Right, just south of the city, the big arch with the two. Yeah, they said they're going to knock that down. It hasn't been knocked down yet, I don't think, according to satellite imagery that I've checked in the last couple of days. And then they're also going to irreparably, quote unquote, destroy the railway, the joint railway at Kaesong. I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll blow a crater into it, but they can always repair that.
Right.
I don't know how you irreparably... Anyway, so we're just kind of watching to see how much they go in this direction. But just as a reminder, last year they were doing a lot of this already. Obviously in 2020, they blew up the liaison office in Kaesong.
Right.
They've been knocking down all the South Korean assets
at Kumgang.
In Kumgang.
Yeah. Which,
the South Koreans reasonably abandoned more than a decade ago, I think.
Yeah.
Because not that much chance of getting it back. But so it's not, a lot of it is symbolic, a lot of it is not new, but it's moving forward, and so we're keeping an eye on it.
Wow. Okay. So really putting words into action there, and the demolition of that arch of the two women touching hands across the highway, that will be a symbolically big thing, but I don't know what it'll mean to North Koreans, but it'll have more resonance, I guess, in South Korea than within North Korea. But changing the map is a big deal, isn't it? I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before. I mean, even in South Korea, if you go to any classroom around the country and see a map of Korea, it's a map of the whole Korean peninsula. You never see a line there where the demilitarized zone is cutting the nation into two. So a recognition of that de facto border would be a big change, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of a small point, but it is going to require funding throughout North Korea to change all these instances.
Right.
There are a lot of places where it's on a permanent display, a lot of posters, a lot of books. They're going to have to change a lot of stuff. And so that's a whole project that they're working on now just because that's the new line.
And presumably that's the end of North Korean use of the United Peninsula flag that we've seen used over the decades, right? The blue peninsula on the white background. I guess they won't be wheeling that out anymore, and probably no more renegade South Koreans will be welcome to visit North Korea to talk about peaceful unification again.
Yeah, but you got to also remember they reversed policies all the time in the past. Just the transition from 2017 to 2018, the amount of heavy, brutal rhetoric against South Korea and the United States that was then reversed once they started talks, it can happen. We don't want to assume the conditions for North Korea wanting to enter talks again. We don't want to assume that they will at this moment, but there's definitely nothing stopping them from reversing these positions that they have now.
No, that's true. But yeah, there's a cost involved, isn't there? That's interesting. All right. Well, thank you very much, Colin, for coming in and giving us an update today. And we'll see you again in the near future.
Sure. Thanks, Checo.
Thank you. Get to the core of Korean insights with Korea Pro's exclusive Seoul event series. Join us for gatherings that bring you face-to-face with key opinion leaders, journalists, and experts on South Korean affairs for dinner, drinks, and more. Engage in deep discussions on political, economic, and social issues at special venues across Seoul. From dinners with Korea Pro editors to insightful conversations with renowned guests, each event promises a unique blend of expertise and networking. Immerse yourself in the pulse of Korea. Register now at events.koreapro.org. Okay, welcome back. And joining us for our long interview today, we have Chun Sujin, who for over 20 years has been staff writer in both Korean and English for Jungang Media Network. That's at the Jungang Ilbo in Korean and Jungang Daily English newspaper, where she's had the honor of several awards and scoops for features that she's written. She's been a correspondent for key government agencies such as the Presidential Office called Cheongwade and the Foreign Ministry, and she's covered North Korea, which is what we'll be talking about today. Sujin, you and I have something unusual in common. We've both studied at Yonsei and Korea universities.
Wow, we are the betrayers for
We are
each.
the betrayers.
Yes.
Right. I never went to a single Goyeon or Yongo sports event. I have no interest in sports whatsoever, as regular listeners will know. Did you ever go to any of those events?
I used to go every single year.
Wow. Okay. Did you cheer for both sides? Or?
No, because I went to the undergraduate of Korea, so I am Korea in my DNA. I have to say.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I went to Yonsei first and Koryo later as a graduate student. So, but yeah, I have no loyalty. So how did you first end up writing a news story about North Korea?
Actually, I have to talk about my family tree first
Sure.
because I'm half North Korean.
Okay.
I have to say because all my grandparents on both sides, actually they came from North Korea.
Oh. Whereabouts?
Well, my father's side, they went from the Hamgyong, North Hamgyong province, and
Okay.
my mother's side from the Pyongyang-ish side. I'm saying Pyongyang-ish because they were not in the city, but
Right.
in whereabouts. So they all fled the war, and they've been sort of it has been a ritual for me, every single year, for Seolnar, the New Year's holiday,
Yep.
to go to the northernmost part of the South Korea, which is Imjinggak. And I was just a little girl, knowing nothing and just craving for my candies, but everybody was crying there.
Mm.
And I had no clue, why are they crying and why are they so silent? And as I grew up, I sort of understand the weight of being separated in the family.
Right.
So that's how I got motivated.
Okay. So yeah, really, it's in your blood Now, do you find is it difficult to catch the attention of readers in South Korea? Is North Korea still an interesting topic to South Korean readers, especially people under the age of 50?
That is such an important question, Jacko, because I've done North Korean coverage has been sort of like the crown, like a jewel for me, for many years, and I've put my heart and soul in it. But the funny thing is, and also somewhat frustrating thing is, because we get the data these days, right, about how many page views we got, for which stories, and whenever I start writing, whenever I write some in-depth news analysis about Kim Jong Un's ambition on nuke weapons and things like that. Well, other times I write about just lighthearted sort of stuff. Oh, which handbag did the researcher carry this thing? And surprise, for the latter, on researchers handbag gets much more page views.
Right.
So that is a bit frustrating, but actually, that's sort of I think that at least people are interested in North Korea still.
Or are they interested in celebrity culture in general, and then Ri Sol-ju simply becomes one more celebrity, like a K-pop star or a Korean drama or film actor, and you wonder, well, what kind of bag does, I don't know, Hwang Hae-kyo have, or what kind of sunglasses does Lee Byung-hun wear? That kind of thing. It's part of celebrity culture.
Yes, that is very true, Jacko. And on top of that, I'd like to just think that, well, they are the celebrities, and there are celebrities from a weird world, right? From Pyongyang, their hermit kingdom, and so-called brothers and sisters from the past. So
right.
I think that sort of adds a little exotic sort of flavor.
Ah, yeah. So it's near and far at the same time. Familiar and exotic. Now, earlier this year, you had a story published at the 중앙일보 in which you talked about, quote, Season 2 of North Korean summit diplomacy, and that attention should be paid to Kim Jong Un's knowledge diplomacy. So tell us a little bit about how you see North Korea's summit diplomacy approach changing in recent years. What's the approach in Season 2, and what's knowledge diplomacy all about?
Yes, actually, I think, Pyongyang seems to be right now taking kind of a repose, kind of taking a, some might call it an impasse, because nothing is happening, dialogue-wise. But at the same time, I think they're just taking a step back
from the world.
Yeah, from the world. I think they're just becoming something like a crouching tiger and hidden dragon, and they are just waiting for the right time. And as you know better than me, Jacko, they are geniuses in finding the right timing.
They are very good with the timing, yeah.
Yes. So I think because that is why because next year is a season of elections in many countries. Not just in Korea. In April, we have this general election for the National Assembly. And of course, there will be, I don't know, maybe a change, maybe not, in the White House and also many other parts of the world. And there are wars going on in Gaza Strip and also in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So they are just thinking that, okay, this is not the right time. We have to be crashing a little bit more and just but we do not want to lose attention. And that is why they are having their little princess out on the front.
And we'll come back to the little princess later on. So Season 2 is about sort of waiting and watching, is it?
Yes. And I think that, please allow me to say that the Season 3 might unfold pretty soon, next year. You never know, yeah.
And what about knowledge diplomacy then? What's North Korea's strategy of knowledge diplomacy?
Yes, actually, to talk about the knowledge diplomacy, I have to bring up this lady professor, lady scholar, whose name is Park Young-hae. And you, of course, know her, right? Is Park
Yeah,
Young-hae.
we met at a book talk that Park Young-hae gave when she was in Seoul a couple of months ago.
Yes, at the Canadian Embassy.
Yep.
Yes, and she happens to be a South Korean, of course, with Canadian nationality, who actually has won a tremendous level of trust of the Pyongyang regime. So before pandemic, she was, I guess, she is one and only person who could bring professors and even presidents of the prestigious universities of Pyongyang, not just Pyongyang, but in all of North Korea, to Canada, to her institution, to the UBC, University of British Columbia. And they had seminars, and they had sessions, discussions. The knowledge diplomacy is actually a term that she coined. She has the credit. And I just used it in my articles.
Okay. And so is it about knowledge exchange
Yes.
to achieve diplomatic ends?
Yes.
Okay.
So it is like a kind of a way that Pyongyang is like sending a signal to the world that we are not like hermit kingdom. Like we are willing to talk when things are right.
Uh-huh. But most of that was pre-COVID, right? I don't think
Yes.
they've done any knowledge diplomacy
Yes.
since COVID. All right. Now, of course, this year we've seen a lot of diplomacy between Russia and North Korea. Not much high-level stuff between North Korea and China. So have you reached any conclusions about why North Korea and Kim Jong Un personally is putting so much effort and attention into relations with Russia rather than China?
I think well, Kim Jong Un is not stupid at all. Like he is really smart and he is getting like smarter year by year, I think. And I think he is reading the map right now.
Mm-hmm.
And because like on one side of the globe, we have United States, Japan, and other nations like all teaming up under the Indo-Pacific sort of a strategy, kind of a framework, right? And Kim Jong Un is like, okay, well, I might be thinking that I need to build up something like opposite. So in that sense, like he is teaming up like more with China and Russia, and to have that kind of triangular sort of a strategy, like to have some kind of juxtaposition with the Indo-Pacific from the United States. And like he's actually being really smart because like China and Russia are in need of those like kind of partnerships in the world right now.
But I've talked to some people, including Chad, but also others, who see that North Korea's interaction with China and Russia as being, from their perspective, from Russia and China's perspective, not so much based on common goals or common ideology or common interests and values, but it's much more transactional. If you have X, I have Y, we can both gain something from this. Whereas the Western-style alliance and coming together and cooperation is more based on ideas of this is how the world should run, that kind of a thing.
Yes, I do agree 100%. I've talked to just 10 days ago. I sat down with this high-level incumbent, diplomat whom I cannot name here. But he said
Korean
the same
diplomat?
thing. Yes, a Korean diplomat who actually meets with the president on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me quite the same thing. And I completely agree with him. We'll actually talk about this Kim Jong-il's and sort of a kind of will. Kim Il-sung's will to Kim Jong-il was supposedly...
Kim Il-sung, for listeners there, he died in 1994.
Yes, thank you for that. And he actually, apparently told Kim Jong-il, the second leader of North Korea, that never ever trust China.
Okay.
Because China and North Korea, I think they are sort of utilizing each other. I think they are sort of teaming up, but they are not giving their hearts and soul to each other.
All right.
It's kind of a partnership. It's not like marriage.
Right. Okay. So it's a transactional partnership.
Yes, exactly.
Now, this year has seen an increase in trilateral coordination and cooperation between the US and South Korea and Japan. And as you reported, North Korea is very much a top priority for these three countries. Now, I saw in an article that you wrote that an Indo-Pacific strategy report published more than a year ago by the South Korean government somehow ended up on the desk of a US State Department official and served as a catalyst or a starting point for the trilateral summit held at Camp David last August. Can you explain more about the role that this report and Korea played in the trilateral cooperation?
Yes, actually, that was one of the things that I learned from my reporting tour recently, which just ended early this month. So this is pretty latest or kind of fresh.
Yeah.
The official that I've talked to is the one who works at the State Department at the Foggy Bottom, as we say it. He was actually saying that he was really inspired by the report published by the Foreign Ministry. And he actually got it printed out intentionally instead of just skimming through on his iPad, whatever. And he actually intentionally put it on his desk to have it as a reminder that, okay, it is time to strengthen the ties, the trilateral ties among the three nations. And Korea and Japan, as you know, we are not always best buddies, right?
Yeah.
So, and things have not been very good for the past, especially for the past 3 or 4 years. But now things are different, and that report that you just brought up became kind of a signal, kind of a bellwether that it is time to start a new
relationship between these three countries?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Briefly, what is South Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy?
Actually, I think the gist of it is a huge report, and I don't want to bore your listeners, but I think the gist of it is that actually South Korea is a declaration of Seoul that, okay, we are seeing beyond the peninsula.
Ah, okay.
And we are ready to put our national interest the first. And for that, we are ready to team up with Japan.
Yeah.
Although we have some past like sort of related issues.
Yeah.
But we are moving forward. I think, and that is the gist of it.
Now, earlier this month, you also reported that the U.S. ambassador to Japan, Rahm Emanuel, spoke to reporters. I guess you were there, and he said
Very interesting conversation.
He said even if there are changes in the Korean National Assembly with the election coming up next April, or changes in who's in the White House after the U.S. presidential election in November next year, the trilateral U.S.-Korea-Japan cooperation will not be shaken because it's embedded in the new DNA of diplomacy. Tell us about that and how he could be so sure.
Yes, actually, it is our job, Jacob, to be skeptical, right? As a reporter.
Yeah.
And that reporting tour that I just mentioned and the conversation with Ambassador Rahm Emanuel took place during that reporting tour. So before I got on the plane en route to first Washington, D.C. and then to Tokyo, I was really skeptical about this trilateral sort of partnership. I have to really honest with you.
Yeah, a lot of people are.
Yeah.
And especially skeptical about the durability of it.
Yes, actually sustainability or durability. So I was like, okay, Camp David was really nice. Well, things were perfect, but that was the summit diplomacy.
Yeah.
And as you said, the durability is the key issue. And I was really really skeptical, and I was taking everything with a big, thick salt. But I did some counting last night, and I talked to more than 40 government officials and more than 20 scholars, off the
From
record.
different countries?
Yes, from different countries.
Okay.
In DC and also in Tokyo and also in Seoul.
Okay.
And I was really I do not want to say this as a reporter, but I have to say I was convinced that, okay, this is something serious. It has some depth, does it?
Yes. This new relationship?
Yes. And actually, I sort of thought that while talking to some, not politicians, but some business people and some IT-related people. And they were sort of seeking ties and partnerships with, in terms of quantum physics. And some economy kind of related sort of discussions. And that was being done in the trilateral sort of framework. That is really smart thing, right? And they're not just politics, because politics can be so fragile. Good things can be changed just like that.
Yeah.
So, but they are sort of embedding it really into many parts, many layers of the society. And I think that it's sort of got me sort of thinking that, okay, there might be some sustainability issue being built.
Okay, so you think that it could last longer than the current election cycle? Well, I mean, we can't call it a three-way alliance at this stage, but do you think that somewhere down the track it might become an alliance?
You mean the trilateral?
Yeah.
I think it is a little early for me to say anything because, things about the past between Korea and Japan are, they can be really... they can change everything. And actually, we have some court rulings related to the forced labor issues. And I think the Korea and Japan sort of a bilateral is really a key factor for me to be able to say anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we've seen how political winds can shift here in Korea and also in Japan. And that things have been put aside can sometimes become the focus area all of a sudden. So we have to keep watching to see how durable, how sustainable this new relationship is, and whether the United States is interested in it and able to keep both Korea and Japan talking in a constructive way. I noticed in reporting this, you quote our former podcast guest, Marcus Garlauskas, who said something, he introduced a phrase that was a new phrase to me called the turkey paradox.
Yes.
What is that turkey paradox?
I love that turkey paradox thing that he brought up, and I learned a lot. But he was sort of explaining that there's turkey. And
we're talking about the turkey, the bird, right?
Yes, the bird,
yes. Not the country, okay, yeah.
Well, not the turkey, yeah. The turkey, the bird. And he was just sort of saying that, okay, well, this is spring. The turkey is happy. And the farmer is feeding the turkey and he's taking it so seriously. And turkey is the farmer's kind of a treasure. So turkey sort of gets he or she, the turkey,
Yep.
it sort of like grows them some respect and trust for the farmer. But the farmer has a purpose, right? But the turkey knows nothing. And the turkey sort of like gets like a trust, okay, everything will be fine like tomorrow as well. But the tomorrow happens to be the Thanksgiving day. So the farmer gets...
The farmer kills the turkey
Yes.
and eats the turkey.
Yes.
Okay. And so this is obviously an analogy, in Marcus Galauska's analogy. Who is the turkey?
Actually, he was just sort of saying that the North Korea, he was not just like pinpointing any like specific like a stakeholder, but he was just saying that, if we just like keep thinking that North Korea will be just North Korea, we might be in danger. So if we get so accustomed of like North Korea being just North Korea, just like shooting missiles or but not giving any kind of a really lethal kind of a danger to the world, and just like let North Korea be North Korea, it might be really sort of something dangerous for the world.
Okay, so it's an analogy about the dangers of complacency and
Yes, yes, exactly.
And thinking that yesterday was okay, today is okay, so tomorrow is going to be okay too.
But tomorrow maybe not be okay.
All right. Now, last year in August 2022, you published a book called North Korean Women in Power, Daughters of the Sun. Was it only published in English, or is there a Korean version too?
Actually, I just wrote it in English because I've sort of like figured that, there is no English language book on North Korea written by South Korean reporters. And of course, there are like quite a few really good, great books in English, like on North Korean regime. But I wanted to give it a perspective from the South Korean sort of way of seeing North Korea.
So one of your chapter titles is The Birth of New Women. Who or what are the new women in North Korea?
Yes, actually, I think to talk about the term new women, I have to go back to Mr. Kim Il-sung, the founder of the regime.
Yeah.
And while like doing a research for the book, it was like sort of like my nerdy kind of thing to like dig everything that I could read from the speeches, from the old-time speeches that Kim Il-sung made. And that was from his one of most speeches to women. And he was saying that, it is a time for new women who actually should be treasured more by the society. And he was actually saying that women should be working and women should be the mothers of the revolutionaries.
That sounds like a double burden. Right?
Yes.
Working with a job and being the mothers of revolutionaries.
But actually, come to think about it, Jacko, that was a time right after the war.
The Korean War?
Yes, the Korean War.
Yeah.
And actually, before Korean War, of course, we had this colonial period. But before that, that was Joseon Dynasty.
Yeah.
And Joseon Dynasty did not actually give much freedom, let alone the prestige to women, right? So women in the peninsula were sort of like not treated equally. We all know that, right? But we have this, just imagine, you are just like average Jill living in Pyongyang, and you have this new leader saying that, okay, we should treat you with more respect. And we are now calling you a new woman. How would that feel?
Right.
I think that was really kind of smart.
Well, North Korea was very quick to pass a law on gender equality, I think even before the formal foundation of the state on the September the 9th in 1948. So one of the first laws passed during the Soviet military administration was this law on gender equality. So I guess this idea of new women fits into that.
Yes.
But
that is actually only on papers, right? We all know that.
Generally, it's said that the role of women in North Korea isn't that much better than, maybe it's even worse. Maybe it's the same as here in South Korea, but it's certainly not a paradise for women.
It is not. But actually, when I was writing my master's degree at Yonsei, I'm sorry, at Seogang, this is a different university. But I was in the master's degree on North Korea, and I actually, for the paper, I interviewed more than a dozen North Korean defectors who are all women and who were the college graduates. And actually, they told me that they actually did not have that sort of a freedom or respect in North Korea. And that is why they chose to defect their home to find a new paradise in South Korea. But things are equally frustrating here. And I always say that in North Korea, women are the ones who actually have to bring home the bacon and also cook them.
Right.
So it's a double burden, as you said.
Yes. Now, in your book, you focused on Kim Yo-jong, the younger sister of Kim Jong Un, and Ri Sol-ju, wife of Kim Jong Un, Choe Son Hui, now the foreign minister, and Hyun Song-wol, both a singer and a de facto political protocol officer.
Yes.
When your book came out, it was still a few months before Kim Jong Un's daughter was first brought before the public in November 2022. So what conclusions did you draw in your book about North Korean women in power in general? How powerful are North Korean women in the elite circles?
Yes, and to talk about these women that you just mentioned, I have to start my logic with Kim Jong Un. Because Kim Jong Un is the first ever leader of North Korea who actually has this female entourage. Come to think about it, he is actually surrounding himself with these ladies.
Right.
First ladies are Jew. And nowadays, as you said, a Choe, well, the name we are not 100% sure, but the daughter who is put out in the front. And also the Kim Yo-jong, the sister. And the first ever lady minister, the Madam Secretary of North Korea, whose name is Choe Son Hui, as you mentioned. And he is surrounding himself with these lady elites, and there is a message to it. But at the same time, I always get this question. So in case of contingency, will Kim Yo-jong be the queen?
Okay. Well, that was something I was going to come to later on. But right now, do they have power?
Actually, I think they have the power to a certain degree, but I hope I'm really wrong. But I have to say that, they are very aware of their limits of their powers because they are very aware that, they are given this power because there is Kim Jong Un on top. And they know that they have one person who can be the king, and that is Kim Jong Un. And without Kim Jong Un, their power will be gone at the same time.
From what you've seen and when you were researching your book, is Kim Jong Un the kind of leader who gives power, gives the autonomy to the women and also the men around him to do their jobs, or do they always have to seek his approval before they make a decision?
I would say the latter. Because, even I think it is not Kim Jong Un's call. I think every single person who is working for Kim Jong Un is more than happy to be loyal to Kim Jong Un, and that is Kim Jong Un's magic. And that is the North Korean regime, how it functions. So they are more than. We all remember the photo of Kim Yo-jong, holding this ashtray.
Yeah.
And that is a servant serving her master, right? And she is not a stupid girl. She is really smart, and she actually calculated the angle, I think, to say out to the world that, okay, I serve my brother. He is the king. I worship him. And that is a really smart kind of a thing, kind of a message.
I mean, he might be in the role of some kind of a king, but she also grew up with him. So she's seen him when he was a boy and when he was definitely not kingly. I wonder, is it simply that the role that he's in, that she has respect for the role, or does she actually, we can't know this. We can't know whether she actually thinks that her brother is something special or if it's just that that's the title he has. On May the 30th this year, you published a guest essay in the New York Times with the rather clear headline, Why North Korea's Princess Will Never Wear the Crown. Can you explain that title for us?
Yes, and again, I hope I am really wrong. Well, back then when I wrote that piece, I've talked to 20 experts who, many of them were intelligence officials at the NIS. And actually they were saying that, 99% the answer is no, that Jue will be wearing the crown.
Now, is that... Okay, we've got two things there. First of all, the question of what is her name, but we'll come back to that later on. Yeah. We've got a separate question about that. But the first question is, can she never wear the crown because no woman can wear a crown in North Korea? Or
that's the logic.
Okay,
that was the logic back then. But that was kind of in the early stage of the daughter's debut.
Right. I mean, she came out in November 2022. Yes. You wrote your piece in May. Since then, another 7 months have gone by and another few outings with the daughter, accompanying her father to different events, including the recent satellite launch.
Yes.
So do you stand by your conclusion now that the daughter of Kim Jong Un, whatever her name is, will never be a successor of a leader of North Korea?
Well, as of May this year, I was 90% no and 10% yes. But now, after all those months have passed, I'm
different appearances,
70% no and 30% yes.
Okay.
Because, and there was one photograph that really sort of talked to me. And that was published in recent weeks. And that is actually a photo of the daughter whose name we are not mentioning intentionally.
Right.
And the daughter standing in front of her father.
Ah.
As I've said, the angle of every single photograph that North Korean releases has a meaning. And there's this person who is actually standing in front of the dear leader is a message. And actually that is why recently a senior level advisor to the president, they got talked to the reporters that, okay, well, now we should not be ruling out the possibility.
Okay. Now, of course, she's only, 11, 12, 13. We're not really sure what her exact age is. Her name and age are a bit of a mystery.
Right.
But these are things that priming a successor takes some time. Kim Il-sung spent decades to get Kim Jong-il ready. Kim Jong-il didn't have a lot of time.
Because of the stroke.
Kim Jong Un, he had his coming out party in September 2010. And then the father, Kim Jong-il died in December 2011.
Yes.
So there was really just about a year and a couple of months. And so I guess Kim Jong-un, if he is thinking about the next generation, he wants to take a bit of time. There are some unconfirmed stories that he may have other children, that that the girl may not be the only child or even the oldest child. Do you put any credence to that?
Yes, actually, I do agree. And I've talked to quite a few people who are really well informed. And some of them told me, well, if I just sum up everything and just digest it, I have this conclusion that there might be 3 children in total, at least.
Okay.
And Choe, the daughter would be one of them. And the person who is really who meets with North Korean senior level people on a regular basis told me that there are 2 sons and 1 daughter.
Okay. It's interesting, going back when Kim Jong-il had 4 children or something by 2 different mothers, that even before Kim Jong Un had been announced as the successor in September 2010, there was already a lot of talk in the intelligence community and in the media about, Kim Jong-nam is the oldest, but it won't be him because of whatever reason. And
the
then
Tokyo Disneyland thing,
the Tokyo Disneyland scandal. And then there's the Kim Jong-chol is the oldest son by the second mother, but it won't be him because Kim Jong-un said that he's too effeminate. And then there's another. So similarly here, I guess we've got a bunch of children, and Kim Jong-un may have chosen the daughter because she's the one he's bringing out everywhere. You have to wonder on what basis he's making that decision. And if he does make that decision, then she probably could be the successor. Now, going back to the name question, we've been hedging on that because there's a story that came out just a few months ago from a former NIS agent here in South Korea who said that despite all the reporting that her name is Kim Jue, that's really a misunderstanding, and that Kim Jong-un was not saying her name is Jue, but referring to her as Choe, and that her name is really Kim Un-ju. What do you think about that? Is it likely, given all the reporting about, for example, people who had the name Jue had to change that name because it's too similar to the daughter,
I personally think that, given the circumstances so far, I think Jue is I would give my vote to Jue.
Okay.
But at the same time, I have to be cautious because when Kim Jong Un first came out, everybody was spelling, including myself, Kim Jong Un.
Yeah.
And that is actually because of this a Japanese cook named Mr. Fujimoto Genji, who was Kim Jong Un's favorite, and of course his father's favorite to cook in Pyongyang. And in Japanese language, there's no Un, there's only Un. So that is why we sort of spell his name Kim Jong Un with the Un with Chinese characters meaning cloud. And even back then, people who knew who know North Korea said there is almost zero chance that North Korean regime would have that a cloud Chinese character in the leader's name, and there might be some a misunderstanding, and they happen to be right? So we have to be very cautious about the names, but at the same time, what should we call her?
Right, yeah. I do wonder why this former NIS agent, whose name escapes me, why he came out and said very clearly in an interview, no, it's not Jue, it's Unju. I mean, he must be basing that on something, but we don't know what that is yet.
No, not yet.
No. Now, going back to the idea of who can be a successor, before Bashar al-Assad became president of Syria following the death of his father Hafez al-Assad in July 2000, so 23 years ago, there were voices in the West who thought there was no way that he could become president. He had studied ophthalmology in England and he was too soft. And then there were some that said, oh, well, even if he does become the leader, then he's not strong enough and he won't last long. And yet, 23 years later and a civil war later, Bashar al-Assad is still president of Syria.
Yes.
And I guess this is why I'm skeptical when people claim to know with a certainty whether or not the daughter of Kim Jong Un could succeed him as a leader.
Yes, actually, I agree and I hear you, Jacko. And I think that after writing on North Korea, there's one thing that I'm really sure. But you can, what is predictable about North Korea is that they are really unpredictable.
Yeah.
And that is not because they're stupid.
Mm-hmm.
It's because
because they're crazy.
Yes. They know how to tantalize people. They know how to wait, when to wait and when to come out. So if you just if you expect the least,
yep.
it might happen. And you never know.
Right.
And Kim Jong Un might be thinking that, okay, well, gender is not the top priority.
Mm-hmm.
He might be just watching which child of his would be fitting the crown.
Right. Yeah. Now, in your book, there's also a chapter, the last chapter, called When a South Korean Female Reporter Met a North Korean Official. Tell us about that. I presume this is your own experience?
Actually, well, it is mine, and also it was my beloved hube, junior reporter, and it is my sort of a regret that I could not have enjoyed a chance to actually visit Pyongyang. But I've been to Kaesong and many other parts of the North Korean territory, but. So it is my dream to go to Pyongyang, and I will go to Pyongyang in doing anything, whatever.
Right.
But there was this my junior reporter who actually works for another publication, and she has been North Korean sort of an expert for many years, and she has. She was one of the she won the lottery because what we do at the Unification Ministry Press Corps, we do the lottery to get just a handful of reporters to accompany the government trips to North Korean cities.
Okay.
Because not every single person can go, right? There's a limited city on plane and things like that.
Yep.
So she won the lottery and she actually went to Pyongyang and because we want to write everything that you do in Pyongyang is a newsworthy sort of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she was put into this hotel in Pyongyang. I forgot things which one was that, but there was this underground beauty salon.
That could be it could be several hotels. I know I've always stayed in the Yanggakdo. That's got an underground beauty salon.
Yeah. So she was actually thinking about doing a story on kind of a personal kind of a story.
Yeah.
So she was actually went down there and she actually she started to shampoo. But then another friend, sort of colleague, went in, oh my God, there's Kim Young-chul on the lobby.
Oh,
and
in the lobby of the hotel, right?
Yes. So she actually, oh my God, I have to go now. And she just without drying her hair, she just ran to the lobby.
Out of the beauty salon.
Yes, out
with
of the
shampoo
beauty salon.
in her hair.
Yes, with her shampoo.
Wow.
And she on the lobby, she asked Kim Young-chul, so are you the one who were behind the Cheonwon attack?
And the shelling of Yeonpyeongdo.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And Kim Young-chul was he just disappeared. And
he didn't answer the question.
He didn't answer the question.
Oh, dear.
So, but we have this really sort of interesting sort of anecdotes from reporting tours to South Korea.
Wow, and hopefully one day that'll be you, right?
I know. Yeah. I am more than ready to cut out on my shampoo and just run on the lobby floor. Yeah.
What's the story about North Korea that you would like to write an exclusive scoop on in the next year?
Well, I want to sit down with Miss Kim Yo-jung.
For an interview.
Yes, because
Where?
In Pyongyang, of course. Because I know that she is such an ambitious lady, and she is. Well, I have this appetite for women who actually rule the world. And with all due respect, I am not demonizing her. I am not sort of saying that she is crazy or whatever. Although I am little critical about her writings in Rodong Sinmun.
Yeah, she does go a little bit over the top with her criticism of South Korea and attacking leaders of South Korea.
Yes, but I am more than eager to listen to her part of stories.
Wow. Well, thank you once again, Chun Sujin, for joining me on the NK News podcast today. Listeners can find your book, North Korean Women in Power, Daughters of the Sun, by looking online, and they can read your articles at the JoongAng Ilbo and the JoongAng Daily. Are you on Twitter?
No, I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but
Okay,
yeah.
all right. What's your Instagram handle?
It's Sujini, like _ Sujin C.
Okay, we'll put that in the show notes there. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Navigating the dynamics of the Korean Peninsula requires more than just information. It demands insight. Korea Risk Group offers strategic consulting that cuts through the noise. Our experts provide in-depth analysis, risk assessments, and bespoke reports, all tailored to your specific needs. Whether you're exploring new opportunities or managing existing challenges, our insights can be your compass. To learn more about how we can help you make informed, strategic decisions, visit korearisk.com/solutions today. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our podcast episode for today. Our thanks go to Brian Betts and Alana Hill for facilitating this episode, and to our post-recording producer genius Gabby Magnuson, who cuts out all the extraneous noises, awkward silences, bodily functions, and fixes the audio levels. Thank you, and listen again next time.